ni hao, xin chào, or whatever else your greeting of choice may be, from Haiphong, Vietnam. I apologize for the noise. There's going to be quite a lot of banging going on, but there is literally no place and no time in this country where it is ever quiet. At the very least, it's not swelteringly hot today, though it is still kind of sticky and humid. Alright, if you're a runner, then you probably have shoes. And if you're a serious runner, whatever that means, then you probably have a rotation. Now, that could be 2 shoes to give the midsole 48 hours to decompress between runs, or it could be 20 shoes because you have too much money, an addictive personality, very, very specific requirements for each and every run, something else, or a combination of some or all of the above. Either way, a lot of us have some sort of a rotation, and that is what this video is about. So, come join me as I explain roughly how I build a rotation and introduce the new shoes that I'm hoping will take me through training and towards a new marathon PB. First things first, I have to set some ground rules. As I said, rotations can vary wildly from person to person, depending on preferences and means. And so, for the purposes of this video, and maybe videos in future years to come, I have constructed a basic framework for building a running shoe rotation based on my personal needs and preferences. So for me, this is going to be a 5-shoe rotation, all of which are shoes that I will be using in training. There's not going to be any dedicated race day shoe here. All 5 shoes have specific purposes, profiles, or types of runs that they're supposed to help me cover. And these are a cushioned daily trainer, a lightweight daily trainer, a shoe for threshold runs and faster long runs, or long runs with faster blocks built into them, a shoe for speed work, and a shoe for long runs. And so I will introduce the 5 shoes that I've got in that order, and maybe talk about some other shoes that I thought about getting but ultimately decided against. So shoe number 1 is my Cushion Daily Trainer, and if you're familiar with this brand, you will already know what this is by dint of it not having a shoebox and coming in this giant purple sort of thing. Also, you know, it has their logo on the front, so there's that. So this is a Bmai shoe. I guess something that I didn't go over in the intro that I should have said is that for this rotation, purely to make things interesting, I decided to pick shoes from different brands. So I refused to let myself pick more than 1 shoe from the same brand. And here they are. Turn that around so you can have a good look. This is the Bmai March 6. So just to go over some basic stats, this has 35 millimeters of stack height in the heel, I believe 27.5 in the forefoot for a 7.5 millimeter drop. It weighs 301 grams in an EU size 45, which is kind of annoying to me because this was the last shoe that I got to fit into this rotation, and all of the other shoes weighed under 300 grams, and I thought, yay, I'm gonna get an entire rotation under 300 grams. The midsole uses Zhifangzu, which is just a generic name for ETPU. And yeah, I'll put the price on screen for all these shoes. I'm not going to read it off because I haven't got it in my notes and I can't remember it off by heart. So one of the reasons I plumped for these is I've had a few Bmai shoes, and while I didn't necessarily get on with the Jingtan 2 or the Carbon 42K2, which is their race day shoe, the other 2 shoes that I've tried, the Bmai March 4 Plus from the same lineup as this, and the Bmai Soar, I found to be really good daily trainers, although with very different profiles. The March 4 Plus is one of my favorite daily trainers that I've ever run in. I really, really, really liked that shoe. So I don't know what it's going to be like to run in. What I really hoped this was going to be was basically just the March 4 Plus again. Like if they re-released that shoe, I would buy it tomorrow. But anyway, this doesn't seem as heavy as the 5. It does look kind of good. It certainly looks fairly comfortable. The upper is fairly similar, but nicer, I think, in terms of this material. It certainly feels higher quality than the March 4 Plus. It's not too thick, which is one of the things I liked about that shoe. Likewise the tongue, there's some decent padding, but it's not very thick. The front bit looks fairly breathable. They changed the outsole up a bit. I don't really like this pattern of outsole. I don't know if you can see, but it's more that The lugs don't stick out so much as they're indented into the midsole, and that was one of the issues I had with the Jingtan 2. But yeah, basically I got this and I couldn't really turn it down because I wanted to try out the next shoe in the March lineup, and I love the March 4 Plus so much. I just sort of want another shoe that's going to feel like that. In terms of other cushion daily trainers I was thinking about buying, I feel like unlike the Western market where it seems like everything is going towards more cushioning, softer, heavier shoes, maybe it's not, maybe that's just entirely in my head. The Chinese market doesn't really seem to have that big a focus on sort of heavier cushioned shoes. And so there weren't really that many contenders that I looked at. One potential was the Yueying 5, I think it's called the Infinite, even though it translates more closely to Shadow. And that looks kind of good. There's also an Infinite Plus, although I would have considered that. In fact, I was considering that as a long run shoe. Okay, so the next shoe in my lineup is the lightweight daily trainer. Now, in the past, I've usually gone for sort of lower stack, slightly firmer, more responsive shoes. For this one, I've sort of changed up the philosophy, and I have gone with the 361 半时跑, or half-hour run. As the name might suggest, and also the marketing seems to be geared this way, it's kind of positioned as a beginner shoe or an entry-level running shoe for people who maybe don't run all that much, or they want a commuter shoe where they can go to work and do a little bit of running afterwards. But I have seen plenty of reviews online, at least in Chinese, suggesting that these are genuine, good, legitimate running shoes. So one of the things that intrigued me about these is, I don't know, I bought it in this colorway, and I'll try and put a picture on the screen somewhere of the New Balance Rebel V2, which also came in a sort of an orange colorway. And this shoe, looking at it like visually, really reminds me of that shoe. And when I got it, the foam likewise kind of reminds me a lot of that. It's very, very soft. It's sort of slightly shiny, and I have actually my version of the Rebel V2 here, but I have it in the different colorway. And sort of looking at them together hand in hand, this midsole foam to the touch feels very, very similar to the older Fuel Cell that you got in this. Obviously, I think New Balance have now replaced Fuel Cell with sort of a PIBA-based foam, so it's completely different. So I don't know exactly what this is. I'm not even going to speculate. All I'm going to say is that to the touch, to me, it feels a lot like Fuel Cell in the older New Balance shoes. This one has a stack height of 30mm in the heel, 24mm in the forefoot, so that's a 6mm drop, which is also the same as the Rebel. I guess 30mm now counts as lower stack, I don't know. This upper is sort of very, very translucent, very, very thin, so it'll be interesting to see what that's like on the run. And I guess I should say the weight, which is 250 grams in an EU 45. In terms of shoes that I considered going, instead of this as my lightweight daily trainer, I guess I should say the Hongxin Erke, I think Qifeng is the name of the shoe. It's like their speed shoe, but it sort of also is one of those more traditional lower stack, maybe slightly firmer midsole sort of speed shoes, which in the right circumstances is quite good as doubling up as a low weight daily trainer. Another shoe that I really, really considered was the Qiaodan TR. I think TR stands for like trainer, but I might be wrong. And that shoe looks really good and is insanely cheap. I think that was only like 199 RMB, but looks pretty good, and I've seen positive reviews. The reason I discounted that was the whole only one shoe from one brand thing. And I also considered the Qiaodan 5, or the something Blame 5, I can't remember the English name, also from 361, but I saw a bunch of reviews that were saying that was pretty firm. On to shoe number 3. This is my threshold and sort of faster long run shoe. And for this one, I went for the Li-Ning Red Hare 8 Pro in this rather awful colorway. There was sort of neon orange or neon green, I think, were the only two choices in my size, and I went with this one. Anyway, if you've seen my other reviews of Li-Ning shoes, you will not be surprised to learn that I have no idea what the stack height is for this because they don't say, but I can tell you the weight, and that is 262 grams in an EU size 45. So it's fairly light, although to be perfectly honest, that's a little bit heavier than I would usually want for a threshold shoe, but I think it should probably be fine. One of the reasons I went for this is because I already have the Feidian 4 Challenger, which is the bottom rung of Li-Ning's premier sort of line of racing shoes. And this is kind of the other line. It's more like the democratic, like everyone, casual runner, slightly cheaper version sort of racing shoe, I guess. Or you could argue it's the plateless alternative to the Fadien lineup. I don't really know. So I have the Fadien here. The midsole material, I believe, is the same. It feels the same. It's both advertised as Boom. I'm not going to get into the what the heck is Boom argument again. Just know that it could mean a lot of different things. This version feels softer. And, it's quite important, this one doesn't have a plate. It does have these weird like plastic stability elements, which I don't think is something that I would necessarily need, but it'll be interesting to see if I can feel them. In terms of other shoes I thought of picking up for this role, I thought the Antar C2026, which is like their premier sort of non-racing training shoe. But reviews and going to Antar shops and prodding them led me to think that that one was maybe a little bit too firm for my liking. But also Antar and Turbo or X-Step, two brands that I do not have in this pile, they tend to be a little bit more expensive. And whereas I picked this up for I think just over 300 renminbi, the C206 was like 600. Other shoes I considered were the Bmai Jingtan Fly, which is sort of like the, again, more democratic like marathon racer for people looking for like sub 4 or like 3.5 hours marathons, I think is how they advertise it. And the last shoe I considered for this role was the Hongxin Erke Juechen. I think they're onto the 2 now, which is kind of like their race day shoe, not quite their race day shoe. There's a Juechen Pro, I think. So that's like another carbon plated option. I didn't go for that because, again, it was a little bit more expensive and I wasn't really sure on the sizing. I didn't want to spend a lot of money on a shoe that might not fit and that I can't send back because I'm ordering all the way from China. Alright, my fourth shoe is my Speedwork shoe, which I'm hoping might also double up as a sort of long run with faster work in it sort of shoe, because I find that the long run is the hardest run to get the right shoe for. So even when buying a threshold shoe or a speed shoe, these days I'm sort of looking at shoes I think might also double up as a potential long run shoe if the long run shoe that I want doesn't actually work over the distance. Anyway, these are the Qiaodan Strong 3 Pro, which I have in this horrible black colorway. Do not like black colors. They have some great colorways for this shoe. Black was the only one that was on discount in my size when I bought it, and then literally like 3 days later, all of the other shoes went on the same discount. So I could have had some fantastic colorways that maybe I'll put up on the screen. Anyway, I ended up with this boring one, so This has, according to the information I found, 32 millimeters of stack in the heel, 24 in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter drop, and it weighs 258 grams in my EU size 45. I bought all of these shoes in a 45 since I figured out that I could get away with doing so because lighter and yeah. So again, these aren't crazy light for Speedwork shoes, but they're definitely not heavy. So these have a Gongfu Turbo HP midsole, which apparently is just PIBA. Feels like a fairly dense formulation. It's certainly kind of hard to dig my thumbs in here, so it'll be interesting to see what this is like on the run. It also has a carbon plate in it, and I got this one because it's kind of like the Red Hare series. From what I can see, it looks like the Tianfeng is kind of like a more trainery, slightly cheaper series compared to, say, the Feiying series from Qiaodan. I do have my Feiying PB4 here. Basically, I just wanted to see what the sort of alternative parallel, like PIBA based line is like, because that's not a PIBA foam. Anyway, this is a bit cheaper, and you can tell it's more of a trainer because it's got a bit more padding around the top than that one does. It's definitely more of sort of a comfort fitting upper. It's got, I think, a bit more of an outsole, and it just all around feels a little bit more like a super trainer than that, which is more like an out-and-out racer. Take a look at some of the other shoes that I was thinking of maybe using for this purpose. Yeah, I mentioned the Bmai Jingtan 3 earlier as the sort of race shoe from Bmai. It's 600 and something, I think, at the moment, renminbi. Other options on a similar vein would have been the Hongxin Erke Juechen Pro, although I think the Juechen probably would have been fine too. The other options were sort of some of the X-Step shoes. They've got quite a range. I think the 260X is their nominal sort of super trainer line, but in the end, I think just the curiosity towards the Jordan, having run in this other one, and really loved this shoe. This is probably my favorite shoe of the last couple of years. I think, yeah, that interest in getting their alternative line sort of really won out over the other shoes. so that just leaves the last shoe, which is my dedicated long run shoe. Now, I've said that this is sort of the most important shoe, or the hardest one to find. Weirdly enough, I'm going to say that this is the shoe that I'm looking forward to running in, I guess, the least. And this is the Erke Juechen 2.5. Now, I couldn't find any information about the stack height on this shoe, but I think it's reasonably low, probably talking like 28 to 30, that sort of range in the heel. And I'm not even going to speculate as to the drop and what it's like in the forefoot. I haven't cut this bit off yet, silly me. And this weighs 290 grams in an EU size 45, which means when adjusted for weight, it's about 10 grams lighter than the Triumph 20, which is a shoe I might compare it to in a second, and was my old long run shoe from just before I left Shanghai, and the same weight as the Puma DV8 Nitro 2, which was nominally my long run shoe, which I haven't really been getting along with. So here it is. Objectively, it's a decent shoe. I don't really like it. But anyway, I also find that I can't run long in it. But it's the same weight as this, because it's actually deceptively heavy. Anyway, one of the reasons I mentioned the Triumph 20 is because this also has an eTPU midsole, kind of like the Saucony Power Run Plus, I think it is in that shoe. But unlike the eTPU in the March 6, this feels a lot sort of firmer, kind of like the Saucony Power Run Plus in the Triumph 20. Now, I mentioned not wanting to pick up an expensive 361 shoe because they only go up to size 45 and they list the length of their shoes as 275 millimeters, which if it was true, I would have to cut part of my toe to get my shoes into, do the whole Cinderella thing, but that's not true. Because I bought this shoe, which was only 189 renminbi, and I thought at that price, and I kind of wanted to try this shoe anyway, it seemed like a gamble worth taking, because if it turned out to be too small, meh, but if it turned out to be the right size, that opened up Erke and 361 shoes for me to try. Because those brands only go up to a size 45, unlike say Li-Ning or Bmai or Qiaodan, and they advertise their 45s as being shorter than those other brands, even though, as I say, it turns out they're not. If I'd have known that sizing would have been fine, I'd probably have bought the Juechen 4, which is currently out and looks, I guess, more exciting than this shoe, maybe? I don't know. This does feel like it could be a little bit firm. The upper feels kind of cheap. I mean, I shouldn't complain at this price, I guess. And so I'm not crazy excited about this one. It's got this weird plastic sort of stability thing in the bottom. Last time I had a plastic stability thing in the bottom of one of my shoes, it was the Adidas Boston 9, which is the second worst shoe I have ever owned. I don't think this is necessarily going to be a bad shoe. It's just I am fairly excited about all the others in this one. Feels like it could be a bit of a meh shoe. So the main other shoe I considered when I was looking at this for my long run shoes was the Li-Ning Red Hare Pro. And that looks like a really, really good long run shoe. And I'm kind of wondering if I made the right decision or not. But I did really want to try out the Red Hare, and I confined myself to this one shoe per brand rule so that I could try out more brands and more shoes. And so I don't necessarily know that I regret it, but that is certainly a line I'm going to be looking at in future because it does look like it could be a pretty promising shoe. That is the end of my list. I will put out some first run short review things, and then I'll put out full reviews once I've run in them. But now I just wanted to get this review out of the way so that I could actually start running in them. I will also put the price for my entire rotation up here on the screen somewhere. I'm not sure that I've managed to get 5 shoes for less than the price of an Alpha Fly, but I don't think it will probably be much more. I don't think I spent more than 399 renminbi on a single pair of these shoes, although there were at least 2 or 3 where I had to pay 10 renminbi postage, so maybe if you count that, it'll be 409 for the most expensive. But yeah, altogether they were less than 2,000 renminbi, which judging by some of the shoe reviews I'm seeing is a fairly good steal and makes me glad that I am within easy postage distance of China, because shoes are getting crazy expensive these days. Anyway, that was just my my intro to my new rotation. If you got any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments. By the time this video goes out, I should have run in all of these shoes, so I should actually be able to answer some of them. And yeah, I hope this was vaguely informative, vaguely interesting, etc., etc. And I hope to see you next time out. Goodbye.